This is the Powered Up Podcast, Show 60.
You gotta expose the kids to real life because they're living it. You can't. It's not always rainbows and sunshines. Sometimes it's gonna rain, and kids need to know that. And you being there and letting them know that it's gonna rain and it's gonna be sunny some days is how I think teaching should go.
Welcome to a real-world education with insight and advice from teachers in the game, where current and former educators reveal what truly sets apart the great teachers and what it takes to make a positive impact on students. Whether you're in pre-service learning, new to the game, or a seasoned veteran, this is the show for you. You'll leave feeling inspired to take action because we are powering education by empowering you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Ken Ehrman, host of the Powered Up Podcast, and I am here with my co-host, Mr. Matt, the Mentor Rogers. Matt, today was a really fun recording. I've been looking forward to it. I know you have probably more so. Why don't you say hello to everyone and by title, share who our guest was.
All right, so hello, everyone. Goodness gracious, first off, we made it to show 60. And kind of like this journey, I am excited to say it took me a long time to get here for a field placement student. This year is the first year that I'm hosting a field placement student. You'll meet him in a few minutes. His name's Anthony Wiggins. And Ken and I had this idea when I kind of was approached about the idea of having a student teacher, field placement student, that we should document his journey through this experience. You'll hear in the episode, it ends up being a year-long experience instead of a, semester-long experience, but a pretty cool little way to get started. And if you have a good placement, wonderful. If you don't, best of luck
For both parties. For you
both parties.
having a good, future teacher with you for that year, and also for the kid, for the college student, having a good mentor teacher. So this is hopefully and should be recording one of three with Anthony, which we allude to at the end of the recording. But why don't you just quickly explain to our audience how you were united with Anthony to join you for this year-long journey?
So Millersville reached out, and it's funny to hear his side. He was like, they're looking for placement students. And realistically, when talking to Dr. Howard, the director of this learning experience, what she conveyed is trying to make the student teaching placement as meaningful as possible. So what happened is, if they were in education and they chose to approach student teaching in this year-long program, they could apply. And then, since it would be a long connection, we as the professionals that were interested actually interviewed different candidates. And so I had 5 different interviews with 5 different prospective teachers. And at the end of it, both they and I got to interview and kind of record a summary sheet of, this would be a really good match. This would be an okay match. I'd prefer not to work with this person, because a year is a long time. And there is the option that if we get through the first part and it's not jiving, nothing major went wrong, but you don't want to progress, that is okay too. But we sat on an interview, and I will tell you, Anthony pops up with a big smile. And at that moment, I was like, he and I are going to get along. He just brings an incredible energy, and you'll hear about that in this interview. But more than anything, we're recording this episode not for tonight. We're recording this episode to listen back at the end of his placement and just not that he said anything wrong by any means, but I'm excited to see his reaction. We might have to chop this up and have him listen to it at different parts and see how he reacts to his own initial belief of his path in education.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's great that they do that because, I mean, I don't think there would be a teacher out there that would disagree that student teaching is the most valuable experience that we have. Uh, Preparing ourselves for becoming full-time teachers, maybe if you throw subbing into the pre-service category, maybe you could argue for that. But hopefully it was a positive influence, or maybe it was, I don't want to do all of these things that I observed my mentor teacher doing in the classroom. So, I think it's great that they put that much effort into the placement process to make it as successful as possible for both parties. And I agree. It was really fun to hear his answers, his rawness, his just his approach to what is important to him right now, what will grow into becoming more important. He'll realize how easy things are that he finds are challenging now. So this episode was definitely for him in terms of documenting that. But I think for any educator listening to it, just the rawness and what we hear from him, his love for kids, his love for wanting to make a difference is inspiring to remotivate us and to help us power up. Or for our younger teachers or pre-service listeners, hearing and seeing his journey over the next, I guess, like 10 months will be really exciting to see overall. So it's fun. It's interesting to meet Anthony, and I think everybody's going to enjoy this recording. So Matt, since he is officially your guest, why don't you transition us into our interview?
All right, without wasting any more time, let's start the interview with Mr. Anthony Wiggins.
Hi, Anthony. Welcome to the Powered Up Podcast. How you doing today?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing excellent. So we have a really fun experience. I'm really excited for this episode. I've been looking forward to this since Matt and I came up with this idea probably about a month or so ago. So to kick things off, just officially introduce yourself, where you're from, and just kind of your journey towards jumping into becoming a teacher. Why'd you do it, and just kind of what that has looked like in a snapshot.
Well, I'm originally from Pottstown, Pennsylvania, so like Montgomery County area. Um, I didn't always want to be a teacher. I didn't know what I really wanted to be at all, and till I experienced like good teaching, I wanted to like model that for other students and like other kids. And I also saw bad teaching that I didn't want to do myself. And I also like thought that kids could benefit from better teaching. And in high school I found that great teacher who pushed me forward. It was like, you can do this.
So you were influenced by a high school teacher, but you are pursuing elementary. So
Hmm.
what was it about that high school teacher that made that light bulb go off that this is something that I want to pursue and I want to drive as my career? But what also led you to elementary when it was a high school influence?
Gotcha. So what a good thing about my high school was we had CTE programs, which were like career and tech. And through my high school teacher, it was an early childhood education program. So we had a pre-K counts classroom within our building. So with that class, we had to do schoolwork, but we also went over and worked with the pre-K counts kids and just worked with them, taught them how to read, um, write, do things. And that was when I really was like, I would like to work with kiddos for the rest of my life. And it was a 2-year program. Junior year was a little shaky. I was like, I'm still not really sure. It's like they're boogers everywhere. But then senior year was like, like I'm being honest, it was like boogers and like snot. I'm like, I don't think I can do this. And she was like, well, there are the other grades. And I came back the following year, my senior year, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do.
So I know really, I've had the opportunity, obviously, to talk with you, and I think we'll talk about what the program looks like now in a little bit. But going into the college experience, it's kind of a difficult thing to narrow down. You're saying senior year, okay, I could see myself working with kids, and I know we've had the conversation, but you kind of zoned in on an age range that made you feel comfortable. And before meeting our kids, I'll clarify that. But what really led you to where you felt like was your comfort zone? And really, why do you feel like um, that was where you would find your best talents connecting with kids?
I just want to interject real quick. Can you just clarify for the audience what your certification will be when you're finished your program, specifically what grade levels and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'll be certified for pre-K through 4, and I was thinking about doing 5th and 6th. I was talking to Matt about that today, actually, and just seeing how that would work.
So lead into that idea of like you really looked not necessarily at fourth grade. What age range were you looking at, and why was that what you were kind of driving for originally?
Gotcha. So 4th and 3rd grade were not my ideal classes at all. I told Matt, they scared me. They kind of like they they're very interesting. They're very opinionated at that age, and they like to talk, and so they like their opinions to be heard. And I just really wasn't used to that, just being experienced to such a young group where it's just like I just want your love. I just want you to show me that you care about me. And now it goes from like teaching them to read to like having them read to learn, and it's like, all right, it's a little bit shaky here. And that's where I figured 2nd grade was perfect. 2nd grade, well, they're still cute, but they're really capable they're really capable of learning, and like putting like every grade is capable of learning, but 2nd grade I just felt was like ideal for me. And just because I feel as though I give like tough love, so my my empathy and my sympathy kind of ties in with this, how like I want the classroom to flow. Just in a sense, I just feel more comfortable with just being in a second, first, and kindergarten classroom.
So add on to
4th
that.
grade,
So
yeah.
you've been so to clarify for our audience just again, you are spending 3 days a week with Matt for your spring semester. So 4 or 5 months, and then next year you'll be doing full time student teaching to start off the school year with Matt. So you talked about your empathy connecting with those second graders, and now you find yourself working with 9 and 10 year olds. How have you found that your your impression or maybe your idea of a fourth grader was wrong and your empathy is working, or maybe you found that it was right and you've had to adjust that? How would you say that that specific piece of empathy has morphed or connected with the fourth graders you've spent a couple weeks with?
So that's a really great question.
The great questions will come
When
from one side of the conversation.
Oh, stop it.
I like that was awesome. But connecting to that, I just feel as though like um, I'm sorry. Could you just sorry?
No, that's fine.
We
That's fine. That's a good. Hey, when you're interviewing, just remember there's nothing wrong with asking them to repeat a question. So,
gosh.
just how have you adjusted what you thought your empathetic approach would be towards student connections, or how have the fourth graders adjusted to what your approach is differently than you anticipated?
So with being with younger kids, I just felt it was more of like, I don't know. I don't want it like a parent figure. Just more of like, all right, I'm more of like a fatherly figure to you in a sense where you need it. But working with 9 and 10 year olds, they're still so cute. I see kids doodling and doing kids that first graders are sometimes doing, and it really it, it shaped me differently. I didn't think this would happen in the 4th grade classroom. And with my empathy, it's more of like, all right, well, I can talk to you. We can have conversations. So it's not me being to me, feeling more of like an older brother, but being more of like an older brother that's like, all right, I'm going to be on top of you though. You know,
Mhm.
does that make sense at all?
It
I think
does.
that I think that's really the goal is how do you express love and care, because it's okay to love and care students. I don't know, Ken, about in your preparation. I felt like it was one of those things that you had to kind of clearly define a line in that sand of like, hey, I am the teacher and you are the student, and crossing that has always been muddy, at least in education. Eh, but true great learning and teaching, we've heard for years, is through relationships. And I know, Anthony, you and I have had conversations about like what is that balance, and one year it may look different based off the group of how firm you have to be. We are fortunate this year that we have an incredibly tolerant and positive group that, the leash is a little bit looser. What we're allowing is a little bit more. And so when you're talking about that connection, when you're talking about that care and love and support, it can look a little bit different. Unfortunately, maybe not unfortunately, next year when you are doing student teaching, it's a totally different group. So we'll have to kind of together go through that journey of what it looks like to assess what are those challenges, as well as what is that kind of risk tolerance. And I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but like, okay, is very clearly, at least something in our classroom, not going to be, and I speak for all three of us, a thing where it's that classic like don't smile until Thanksgiving. We all know that that is just such a misnomer, and really anyone that does believe that is just harming their own experience with kids. But there is an aspect of creating a regiment, a structure. Ken, unfortunately, I have to boost you up a little bit. Ken, in his teaching, really emphasizes how we can transition the power out of our hands as an educator and put it into students' hands, and then you guide them to make those decisions in reflection of were those the right decisions, as well as kind of like in that Danielson model. I know we were joking about today, right? Like the idea of being distinguished is essentially the kids teaching themselves. Ken, unfortunately, was one of the closer representations of what that looked like. And that was because there was explicit and direct instruction on how to be a learner in Mr. Ehrman's classroom. And there was no budging, and not that there wasn't empathy, but Ken, I don't know if you want to speak to that element of.
Yeah.
How would you say that looked? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's like, how would you, how did that look, and how did you model that every day, and just the routine every year though as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the I will answer that, and I just wanted to make a comment too. You're coming in and you're kind of learning your chops of how to form those relationships, like you said, how to navigate being empathetic, but also being the role of the teacher. And you're coming into a classroom that's been established for half a year. Your experience next year is going to be much different, and you're going to have to learn that as you're establishing the classroom culture, the management, the routines, all of that stuff, while also forming those relationships. Um, it, Not to discredit you, but you're in an easier situation right now because Matt's already established that classroom, and now you can come in and kind of just focus on those relationships. But now you'll have the advantage next year of understanding how to navigate those relationships while setting up the classroom. To answer your question, I think one of the most important things, and our second guest, Rhett Oldham, a middle school teacher, said this, and it has always stuck with me, is um, the lack of being ambiguous is super important for classroom management. You don't have to be super strict. You can be super strict. You can be very quiet and well mannered and manage a great classroom, or you can be loud and abrasive. But when students know what they're going to get from Mr. Ehrman or Mr. Wiggins or whoever the teacher is on a daily basis, that is huge in creating those management styles, those routines, regardless of the type of environment you want to set up. So when you are consistent with the way you react to situations, the expectations you have across the board, and on an individual, level. In the beginning of the year, you have more broad sweeping expectations. But as the year progresses and you learn about your kids, you have to have different expectations for every individual because they all have different um, capabilities when it comes to academics, when it comes to behavior management. So, but still being very black and white with those kids in your expectations. So, in terms of setting up those student centered routines, I think that's one of the key pieces. Um, Never taking for granted what students should know. It's a phrase that I honestly can't stand hearing from teachers is students should know how to do this. They should be able to do that. Well, did you ever explicitly teach them? And if you did you review it? Or when you explicitly taught them, did you do it in the best way? It's taking that total ownership of if they're not doing something I want, well, then I need to fix it. I'm in charge of the classroom. And it doesn't mean that I need to always be in charge or I always need to be leading every specific thing. But if I'm not seeing something I want, I have to address it and I have to fix it. And I have to be very explicit. I was always very honest and explicit with my students. This is why we're doing it this way. This is why these are my expectations. And, offering discourse for them to disagree with me. I would say nobody would have the courage to disagree with me until November, December, as they become more comfortable. But, just having that mindset of, if I want something to happen in the classroom, I need to model it, and I need to have the students model it, and we need to practice those routines or those expectations that we have.
Ken, can I just interrupt and just say, so Ken obviously taught most prolifically in a fifth grade classroom. And so I know, Ken, we've had the opportunity to talk about how we would pull those attributes down to second grade. How would we pull those attributes of, students making decisions? And obviously, you're going to still explicitly teach and you're still going to be very rigid is probably not the right word, but just consistent with everything you do and not take anything for granted. But what other attributes would you bring to, say, a primary classroom that would lead towards the dystopian classroom managed by Mr. Ehrman?
Well, don't forget, my first job was teaching second grade. And although it was early in my career, that was a part of that classroom. I went into a room, took over for a teacher that went out on maternity leave. I started in January, and great teacher. She was a fantastic teacher, but her management style was much different than mine in terms of, when they did centers. It was great because I took over a classroom that did student centered learning, which was a passion of mine. But the management and I'll just say it was very loosey goosey, and the kids got away with a lot. And I wanted that to change, and it's hard for me to reflect back on exactly what I did, but I know it got to a point where other teachers that were supporting the classroom, like special ed teachers pushing in, they noticed a clear difference in the behavior in students and how they were um, more individually focused as they were rotating through these stations. But I really think it comes back to just being very clear with your expectations. I was obviously less abrasive with second graders than I was with fifth graders. I could, more I I could more explicitly tell a fifth grader, what you're doing, that's wrong. Stop doing that. You shouldn't be doing that. Whereas a second grader, you have a kinder approach or a softer approach. But I think the most important thing, regardless if you're teaching first grade or seniors, it's it's black and white. Kids know what's right and what's wrong, what you expect and what you don't expect. And when there's a lack of consistency, that's where they that's where they really struggle. And I think that's the most important thing in terms of setting up expectations, management routines, and just your style of instruction. They know what to expect. That doesn't mean you have to do the same thing every day, but they know what to expect when it's expected. And it takes time, it takes effort.
It's a great point. So to kind of shift gears, I think, I want to talk a little bit about what the next year is going to look like, or I guess 9 months really in your life. What's really neat, so Millersville, a university that I graduated from, as well as Anthony, where you're going right now, has made adjustments to the student teaching process in a way that, I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't know if it would. Um, it may be too early to tell, but you are in a newer program. And part of this program, you're going to be partnering with me for an entire year, which is wildly different than maybe the experience that Ken and I had when we were in school. So, can you kind of describe to us what are your requirements, and then we'll talk a little bit about that experience.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of changes every well, this year it recently changed, I think 2 years ago, where it was you have your one placement now and you have a completely different placement your final slot your senior year. But this has changed with just, I guess, the amount of educators in the field being out. They just wanted to produce more, so they switched this program just to see if just to open more districts up to teachers as well. um and just sorry, I'm uh and just open them up. But this year, kind of have this year, and if I do choose and I do like the classroom, I can come back, and which I am.
I sure hope. Yeah, it's a good way to continue the episode. So I think it's kind of interesting, Ken. I know you mentioned it briefly as well. So you're in my room for 3 days, and for the most part, it's observation based. That is kind of the focus of what is the classroom culture. And more than anything, I know we have a lot of conversations of, we were talking about this in class, we were talking about this in this lesson. And so you're required, at least in this semester, to teach a lesson in each subject area, and then kind of acquire as much as you're comfortable for. And what I think we're really excited about is, Ken, I know from my end, I started student teaching and I had a special ed and regular ed placement, which means in a 15-week semester, I spent 7 of them in one placement and 7 in another, which means you have that warm up phase of a week and a half, 2 weeks in each of them. And you're only really starting to acquire the teaching responsibilities almost like for, I don't know, maybe half of your student teaching experience, which I don't know about you, Ken. That did not give me a great glimpse of what teaching really was like by any means, where I am super excited for Mr. Wiggins to come in at the beginning of a school year, help set that structure, help set that kind of expectation. You get to observe the madness, absolute chaos of the beginning of year, which there is nothing that any class can prepare you for, just because everything has to be ready for day one, and we could start today preparing for the first day of school next year, and somehow, some way, we will not be prepared. But then we lead into going through the holiday season and you graduating and looking for a job as of December, with the hope or potential of having something lined up before that. So I know from my end, obviously we have to get along, and so far our relationship, I'll say from my end, I'm thrilled to have you in my room.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, so good to hear. Good to hear that. But with that being said, in addition, the idea of so much less wasted time when it comes to your student teaching experience, because there is, to use your own example, I'm playing big brother to you right now. We're in the same family. We are working together for the common good of helping kids. But it's that tiered release of responsibility, the processing, how would you handle those type things that I sure hope that even when you do graduate that we stay connected and keep that conversation, and as much as me being a resource to you, it comes back to me. So it's a really,
So I
really
want
cool program.
to I want to kind of challenge you both here. Um, how can Anthony start actively teaching tomorrow more? Not observing so much, not waiting for the one lesson per subject. And Matt, how can you adjust your instructional style to include him more in the instruction? Whether it be, so for example, why not set up more centers and have two teacher led centers? Let him teach the kids how to add fractions for the first time. Let him teach them how to, decode, or how to approach, main idea and key detail. So not necessarily leading a traditional 45, 90-minute block lesson, but actively teaching skills on a daily basis.
I'm sorry. I'd like to speak on that sorry, Matt.
Yeah.
He has been the most flexible mentor I've had. He completely understands what I'm comfortable with, what I'm not comfortable with. He pretty much he lets if I wanted to come in the classroom tomorrow, I'm like, can I do the poetry lesson today? He would go ahead, right at it, and he would have so much faith in me. He has just been awesome in just allowing me to do the instruction that I am most comfortable with. If you want to speak on that more.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's a really important thing because Ken, the hard part that I'm having, and I'll say this to you, Anthony, as well, is you've had life experience and you've had school experience, but there's an element of being in front of the class and running the success of a lesson, and I think we had actually a conversation that I wish I had, and I think I'm living vicariously through you. So if that happens ever and it's too much, let me know. But it's the things that I wish I heard, and it's not like uh, I felt like I was a male educator in elementary, and I was delivered to a classroom on a silver platter because I was engaging in the way that I taught, or I was able to connect with kids. So our goal really is, how do we make ourselves the best teacher, not just an engaging teacher or what have you. Honestly, as you said, I have complete faith in everything that you would do. But one of the challenges to lead from Ken, I think what we can do is we can figure out how we can capitalize on having two great educators in the same room. So that may not happen. I mean, we're recording this in February and you're with me until May. That may not happen until, March or April. But I would love if we figured out a way, Anthony's already been taking over our math specified instruction. He's been taking over some reading groups. He's been taking attributes of our social studies over. So by no means is this supposed to turn into student teaching too early, but how can we create and capitalize on having two educators that know what they're doing, that bring good instruction to kids, and just target more kids to boost them to be the best version, is really how we need to start having that conversation every single day. But so far it has been, one of the beautiful thing. Ken, have you ever had a student teacher?
No, I'm sad to say I didn't.
I had a sophomore block placement, and I wonder, just like when you're a sophomore in college, your mindset's not quite the same thing as being a senior by any means. We all understand it. We were all there. And I just was very off put by the way that people handled that came into my classroom, how their priorities didn't seem to be education and helping kids. They were just there for the hours they needed, and I really struggled with that. And that was 7 years ago, and I refused to have any other educators in my room, pre-service educators, since that point. So putting a lot of faith in you to make a good experience to go forward. But what's really incredible to watch, Ken, And for anyone that's considering it, is to see growth in a human being that is highly intelligent, that it cares about the right things, but to see the things that you say come to fruition so quickly. So Anthony last week did a lesson where I said, it's totally fine to uh, show attributes of your own life or your own personal connection. And there he is preparing for the lesson, and he goes and he gets a picture, authentically him, with the content that he was going to speak about in Central PA. So he goes, he takes a picture that goes along, and he incorporates it in the lesson. Like, that's incredible. They're just kind of like, what is that targeted way that we're wandering the class? And what we were talking about was the idea of not providing equality, but equity of who needed support when they're doing independent work. I have no doubt that tomorrow, actually, even earlier today, you emphasized how you were rotating through those classrooms. But the beautiful thing was just watching teacher instinct. Anthony has this instinct. You may not know the content that we're covering today because I didn't give you the manuals, right? Like, but you can figure out a way to, jump in and support fluidly. And that's just the sign of the bones of being a good teacher. And I know our superintendent talks about how he can train any teacher to be great at teaching content, but it's really difficult to teach a human to be a great teacher. And so that is probably the most encouraging thing. And luckily, I would say that I don't have to worry about that side of things with you. It's just how do we adjust the content that it makes sense to us so that we can deliver it in a way that makes the most sense to kids.
So Anthony, in your first couple weeks of maybe the observing, but more so getting these opportunities to lead lessons, lead small activities in these groups, what have been your biggest takeaways in terms of, wow, that was better, that went better than I thought it would, or that did not go as well as I thought it would? What are some of your key takeaways in some of your first opportunities to teach these kids?
The kids, I'm so like, it all comes like they made it fun, and they made me comfortable because I wasn't comfortable being in the position to teach at first. When Matt was like, "All right, I want you to teach this lesson today. I want to see how you do." I was not ready at all, but the students, and I told them, I shouldn't have told them, and Matt let me know, it's like, not the smartest idea, but you work through it. I told him, like, you guys freak me out, you guys scare me because you guys are older, you guys intimidate me, you guys have your opinions, and but they rocked with it. They let me go, and they were more comfortable with me teaching up there than I was. And so it just it came full circle, and it made just me feel more comfortable. So I feel as though the first takeaway is just the students making me feel comfortable. And then just the second takeaway, I guess, is just I guess I kind of seeing the growth too, because I was, from the first lesson I taught to the lesson I taught about the PA regions, my face was in the book teaching the poetry lesson. Teaching the lesson about the Crusades for ELA. I didn't know anything about it, but the lesson about the PA regions, I felt as though I did better than I did the first time. So it's just the growth and the kids' faith in me. So
So you felt as though you're the Central PA, you felt more confident, not only because it was a second opportunity, but you were more confident in the knowledge of the content as compared to the first one. So you felt that you could speak more, you could lead more versus just trying to read what was being presented.
One of the things that I thought was interesting is, it's impressive to see your preparation. So I threw this Crusades lesson. It was like a 25-minute lesson. It was relatively scripted and everything. And you are there and you are studying the heck out of it. I mean, you are trying your best to be as fluent on this topic, even though they really generate here, this is what you're going to have the kids read. Here are the questions you're going to ask. Here are the connections you need to make. But there's that difference between, dictating what the book says and make it come to life. And so when we had a fairly similar activity with this PA Regions, you could just see, Anthony and I have talked about how you just kind of what they talk about in athletes of like the game is starting to slow down. What you're not just getting the high blood pressure, the heart's racing, your brain's not able to think, you're fuzzy. Immediately in that first lesson, you were so focused on just delivering content that you had no clue, and no fault of yours. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. You had no clue what was going on. The kids could be up and dancing and doing whatever. They weren't. They were engaged, but you weren't in a position to recognize, hey, can I be there? Can I be reading this right? Can I be asking these questions how I'm supposed to? I have to use this example. So one of the most impressive things, and Ken, you will get this completely, is in his PA Regions, he decided to use technology, a app called Padlet that we are very familiar with. And for some reason, with our devices that day, it wasn't working. It just would not work. And I think this was the most impressive thing that I saw, and the growth that I saw is he took a moment, maybe the length of a deep breath, and immediately fired away a solution in the case that the technology didn't work. And what we've talked about is so often us as educators, and I mean as experienced educators, we've spent so much time developing a lesson that we commit ourselves to using the tool over the content being successful. And there he is being like, all right, well, for anyone that's not working, you can use the whiteboard, you can use these post-it notes, whatever. We're just going to get your ideas. All right. 3 minutes later, it's not working at all for anyone. Everyone's going to make this adjustment, right? And so the idea of being able to separate yourself from, hey, this is what is in my lesson plan, this is in my plan book, and recognizing, as I'm sure your heart's racing. We talked about how his eyes are just checking me, waiting for me to come in and bail him out, which I refuse to do. But just in that situation, right? Like, just not only did you come up with a good solution, but probably as equivalent, if not a better solution than what you originally planned for. And it was immediate. And that was probably more than anything the most impressive teacher instincts, because Ken, you and I know that our job is not to write the lesson plan. Our job is to carry out the lesson plan and figure out the decisions to make that lesson plan come to fruition. And it's over and over again so much more about delivering the content than the way you deliver the content. So finding solutions, making adjustments, watching a kid that is having a full meltdown, how can you cool them down to have them revisit? How can you extend that instruction? Those are all on your feet decisions that make up education. That's what it is right now. And it was just really impressive in 2 lessons to have that development and growth was really cool to witness.
That's fantastic. So I want to hear a little bit more from you, Anthony. We do have our 4 exit ticket questions that we'll learn a little bit more with you. I have a piece of advice I want to leave you with as well. But what would you say is, what do you feel or do you anticipate you have to learn the most about during your practicum, or whatever it's called right now, and your student teaching experience to be a great teacher? Like, what are the things that you think you're supposed to learn or you need to learn to be able to lead a class 1 year from now completely on your own?
First thing being time management. I kind of let time get away from me because I do like to connect more with conversations than I should, and I should get better at that, which I'm sure I will. But just time management, and those feels that's just my biggest concern. Um, yeah.
What about in the art of a lesson, or managing a
Well,
class,
thanks.
or connecting with parents? What are some of the other more important things that you feel you need to pull away from student teaching that you're not getting from your academic classes because they're not in the field?
Okay. And personally, I'm learning a lot through Matt's math instruction. Like, I'm learning new ways just to implement my just changing my way of thinking, because math was never my strongest suit. Science, I enjoyed it, but would I go and do it by myself? No. But Matt is making the two least enjoyable things that I didn't like, and he's bringing them to life. It's making them make sense to me, even as a college student. And I'm connecting it with my kids, like, oh, I did this in my college class like 2 days ago. Like, we're talking about this now. Isn't that interesting? And they're like, well, you're doing this in college? And like, yeah. And so it's just like, and it's just like seeing their faces, like, okay, well, now we're here, we're connected now. And so I would feel as though just math and science, just being more confident in teaching that. Parents, I like parents. I enjoy parents. I enjoy talking with parents. Because I don't think you should ever have anything negative to say to a parent. You know what I mean? It should never be bad. It should always be things to work on. This, your child's learning to do this, or your child should just, you know. Um, but yeah, that's how I feel.
That's good because you don't want to lose that feeling of what you're feeling in terms of learning that content because um, when it comes to regardless of the subject you're teaching, the thing that's so easy to forget is that the one way you're delivering it is not going to connect with the 30 kids that you have in your class. And so remembering that, okay, I'm going to teach everybody how to do this skill this way first. And then I'm going to quickly assess the class to determine which students understand it. When I meet with the 6 kids that don't understand it, I can't just do the same thing again and talk slowly so they understand. That's not going to work. You need a completely different approach to teaching that skill, whether it's math, science, reading, social studies, whatever. That idea of reteaching, you can't just say it again slower. It's got to be something different, and so you're seeing that firsthand. That maybe Matt is doing something that you always struggled with as a kid, and he's doing it in a different way. And now it's connecting with you. So remembering that idea that in order to reach all students, I need to do it differently. I need to find what works for them. And then you might find a pattern of what works with that particular student or that particular group of students. Matt, what would you say is something that you want him to take away from student teaching that you think in general is important for all student teachers to take away from the experience?
So one thing that Anthony is phenomenal about is constructive criticism. So the idea of going through this and having an open conversation and evaluating, how we can go about things. And I think that is a huge strength. But we've talked about it. It was the first thing that I shared with you, which is just confidence. The simple idea of gaining confidence. And there's a distinction between being confident that you're going to make a good decision and being confident that you're right. Because, we don't have to always be right, and we don't need to lie to our kids to make it seem like we're right. We just need to be confident that we're going to figure out the answers. And I think, my criticism when you said, hey guys, you kind of freaked me out at our first lesson, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter to the kids if you had said that or not. They were going to follow you because they idolize you. You are their forever temporary fourth grade teacher, and you're going to be their forever second grade teacher or first grade teacher or high school teacher. It doesn't matter. So how we can kind of operate through confidence, and that just comes with repetition and different, trying different practices and trying Padlet and it not working, and having that experience that we felt what that looked like so that we can over plan and over deliver next time, right? And grow and experience. Because if we had a seamless student teaching, then you're not prepared to be on your own. But you being there and being open and trying and asking questions, I think that is the most beautiful thing of what I've seen so far, is just that encouragement, because I don't know the answers. I don't know most of the answers of what the kids are asking, but it's, I'm going to give you my best answer, and I'm going to look it up. And if I can't tell you the exact answer, and we're going to go with it as far as we can. Um, but it's just, it's one of those things that, at the end of student teaching, my ultimate goal is for you to not be worried about you. It's you walking into that classroom, and the only emphasis is not how am I going to teach this. I've got all that structure of how I evaluate materials and how I prepare items for a lesson. It's how can I be proactive with the relationships? How can I interact with my peers and my coworkers to work together for the common good? And how do I just establish myself as a member of this community that is valued more for, the meat of what I bring, not just enthusiasm? Because Ken, I know you'll get this, and our listeners will get this. I can't imagine that in the fourth domain in Danielson that Anthony will ever get anything almost less than distinguished, right? Because the spirit of what you bring to the classroom is incredible. But to also show up and represent yourself as distinguished because of your preparation, the way that you make connections cross-curricularly, the way you make learning come to life, and you target every single kid and make every single kid grow, that is where, that's success in teaching. And so that's what we're going for. That's what I'm going for. I know that's where Ken's going for. It is always an uphill battle that you never get to be like, oh, I made it and I'm done, unfortunately. But it is that pursuit of how we can do the best by kids every single day.
100%. And what I would say is really push yourself to take over as much as you possibly can, whether or not you're comfortable, because you're not going to break the kids. You're not going to break them. If you're doing your best for what if you're trying your best and you're caring for them, you're not going to break them. You might teach a lesson and let's say you try to teach adding fractions and 0 kids walk away learning how to add fractions. That's okay, because you can teach them again tomorrow. But you'll then have the confidence to do it a little bit different, a little bit better the next time. And, that will pay dividends for 35 years when you teach that for the next 35 years. And so, we have had the conversation before that school is a free opportunity for kids to make mistakes. That's not going to cost them anything. No matter how many mistakes they make in school, it doesn't cost anything. Well, you have that free opportunity right now because you have a mentor with you in the classroom. So try to take over as much as you possibly can, as fast as you possibly can. Don't worry about following the guide of adding 1 lesson a week or whatever it is, like phase in, phase out. No, jump in and jump out at the end, because you have this free opportunity to learn as much as you can. And the best way to learn is by doing. The other thing I would say is look outside of Matt's walls for people to learn from. There's other great teachers in his school. I have worked with some of them, but and think outside the box. When I student taught, I ran a before school reading support program for 3rd graders because a teacher in 3rd grade needed help getting that club off the ground. I was student teaching in 5th. So, and I'm pretty sure I just walked around and asked teachers, hey, I am free during these times of the day, or I'm willing to stay after or come early. Can I do anything to learn from you? That is going to be valuable, because you might student teach in 4th grade. You might find out, wow, I actually love 4th grade. And then there's going to be a 1st grade opening, and you're not going to walk away from that because you student taught in 4th grade. No, you're going to take any job you can get. So use your student teaching time. Obviously you need to focus and you need to be prepared for Matt's classroom, especially when you really take over the reins. But you're young. Take advantage of that energy and that time you have, and push yourself to get involved in as many things as you possibly can. mostly to learn from the other adults in and around the school. When you're not in Matt's class actively teaching, go observe another teacher, go spend an hour with them, connect with a first grade teacher and ask, can I run a center teaching a specific skill? Like, get as much experience as you possibly can by doing as much as you possibly can. I think that's super important to take advantage of that. So I want to jump into our exit ticket here. So it's the same 4 questions we ask every guest every week. We have modified them a little bit to make a little bit more sense for you. Matt and I spent some time brainstorming over this because we want to have you back. I'm thinking 3 times total. So we got this now. Get to know Mr. Wiggins. We'll do it early in the fall after you have kind of started the year for a little bit. What your thoughts are on starting a school year, what you've seen from learning the kids, learning the management, the setup, and then at the end of your experience to really try to see your growth. I'm really excited to see how much we'll be able to see your growth through this experience. So the first question is, we ask this to all of our guests: what is the best thing a teacher can do to make a student's school experience better?
That's a great question. I think personal experience, connecting real life. You gotta expose the kids to real life because they're living it. You can't. It's not always rainbows and sunshines. Sometimes it's gonna rain, and kids need to know that. And you being there and letting them know that it's gonna rain and it's gonna be sunny some days is how I think teaching should go. So personal experiences and real life connections.
We haven't really heard that answer, but I love that.
Mm-mm.
That's
Yeah.
a great one. Jump into the next one, and this one can't be me because I know I'm just flooding you with these options. But what is the best piece of advice you've received, maybe from a colleague at work, a supervisor, teacher, or even a student? What is something that you think of and helps you grow further each day?
Just coaches came back to my wrestling. Every second counts, pretty much. It was John Armato, just crazy guy. Every second counts, and he said it every time. I can still hear it now. It really does. It's just the motto that I hear because not a second goes by where it doesn't matter. The little things matter. They really do.
And that couldn't apply to teaching more.
Yeah, seriously.
Every second with a kid matters. You can't underestimate that.
So jumping into the next one. So I think we've talked plenty about this, but the key to classroom management is to act in a proactive way. So before it happens instead of reactive. When thinking about those proactive classroom management strategies, what are some things that you kind of would classify as proactive or try to implement or hope to implement to solve problems before they start?
I don't want to say you should never laugh at a problem. You should never shrug it off, but it should make it comfortable or so to the point where you're not reacting at an overreacting level. You're proactive in your approach to laughing it off or kind of this is not what we should be talking about, or this is not the most appropriate thing we should be talking about right now. Is the best example I can give for just trying to stop an activity and stop being reactive.
It's good. All right. So if your students were asked to describe Mr. Wiggins in 3 words, what would you hope they say? So I want you to pick 3 distinct words, but then you can elaborate after you pick those words. So 3 words to describe Mr. Wiggins. What would you hope students say about you?
Comically intriguing.
And they don't have to flow. They could be
Okay, all right.
Yeah, they don't have to flow.
Comically intriguing and just I don't know. I think they would call me courageous. Or I think they would call me courageous,
So why those
and I
three?
think they respect me. Just the kids are always laughing. I think if they always have a smile on their face. Anything I do, I'm a weird guy, so anything I do, it's always I'm catching them smiling at me or laughing at me or making a weird face at me, which I think is awesome. Um, Intriguing just because like it just I don't want to say like I'm. It's just I feel as though I'm very new to the area or I'm different to the area, and a lot of feels as though a lot of kids find that intriguing or just want to know where are you from or how did you do this or what do you think about that. Not an intriguing sense, and then like confident and
Why courageous? What is
courageous. Sorry,
what is a
courageous.
what's a fourth grader? Why would a fourth grader call their teacher courageous? Because
Because we go out and do we we're everything to the kids. We're cause sometimes parents. We can be nurses. Sometimes we could be guidance counselors. We're everything. So to be able to take over many roles, we have to be courageous. And I feel as though a fourth grader would say Mr. Wiggins and even Mr. Rogers is pretty courageous for the things that he does.
I love that question and I love those answers. And I think, I'll be interested, honestly, to see how those words, if they hold up in the future episodes, because I think, as we continue to go through interviewing and obviously this experience, I think that you'll see some change. I think one of the ones that you referenced, like time management, that's something that you're going to gain so quickly that you're like, okay, that was such an easy bar to, that was my challenge right now. Where are we going to go next? Where are we going to go next? What hill are we going to conquer? And so I'm really excited for, obviously our day-to-day experiences together, but to kind of check in at the beginning of next year and then towards the end of your experience when hopefully you go from being a mentor to getting paid to do this and make a difference in even more kids' lives.
Matt, you have a question you're supposed to ask.
Oh, I missed this. Oh man. Yeah, I make mistakes too. So Anthony, otherwise known as Mr. Wiggins, otherwise known as Moot, and we can go into that later. I don't know if you end up necessarily using social media or other means to kind of document your experience. Obviously, you have university requirements, but is there anything that you're doing that, people that are listening to this or wanting to know about your experience, have questions along the way, can connect with you going forward? What are the best ways for them to reach out to you?
You guys can reach out to me email. I can leave my email for any of you guys. That's probably the best way to reach out to me.
Matt, I think you're gonna have to change that. You should be getting him on Twitter. Get him on Twitter.
Oh yeah,
Get him
Twitter.
following. Get him following
Yeah, Twitter.
educators to learn that way and encourage him to document what he's doing. Especially as he takes over more and more. Snap a couple pictures for him, snap a couple videos for him, have him tweet out a reflection once a week. Really push him to use that a little bit more. So not only we can follow along, but you and I had said about this being a great portfolio piece for when he goes to apply for jobs. But it's important to tell your narrative, to tell your story. So
On it,
we're gonna put.
We'll
I'm gonna say
tomorrow.
right now, unless Anthony has a moral objection. Anthony's social media his Twitter handle will be in our show notes page because Matt's going to make it with him, and he'll send it to me so I can add it. So we'll have his Twitter handle on our show notes page, which can be found at powereduup.com/show60. So Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad we did this. I'm excited to continue to hear about your experience with Matt. Through Matt, and also Matt, give him my number, give him my email. Anthony, seriously, if you need anything, reach out. if you feel like Matt's doing something wrong and you just want to make sure, you can shoot me a text, and I'll let you know whether he's doing it right or not. But seriously, be willing to ask for help from Matt. Be willing to ask for help from others, and you can absolutely reach out to me. I mean that sincerely. So thanks again for joining us. I'm excited to see how the year finishes up for you, and really get your impressions for how you kick off next year. I think it'll be a great experience for you, and I just love that we have another good human being getting involved in education, because that's what we need now more than ever. So thank you everyone for listening. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, or if you're watching on YouTube, smash that subscribe button for us and share this out with as many educators as you know, so you can hear the great stories we have from all of our guests. So, Mr. Rogers, why don't you shut us down for tonight? And that way you and Anthony can get some sleep and get ready for tomorrow.
Sounds good. So, Anthony, you have left us feeling powered up as we power down this episode, like you do every day. You bring a great spirit, and I'm looking forward to what tomorrow brings and the day after that. So, everyone who's listening, excited for you to join in this journey with us and be a part of it. Hopefully, you are doing well. We are slowly creeping out of the winter weather and into spring, which means good spirits and beautiful testing season. But besides that, everyone can kind of take a deep breath and recognize that this moment, every moment counts, and make this one moment count. And just bring the best to your kids, because they deserve it. So we will talk to you next week. Stay well, and talk to you then.